as he has introduced, I am from the city called Aligarh, and that city has a reputation of being a city of storytellers. So I will begin this with a little story about my childhood, about a little button in my home. So when I was 4, a little button hung in my drawing room, and I did not know what this button was. I was a very curious child. When I was 4, the Babri Masjid had just been brought up, and Aligarh was engulfed by riots. And like I was one of those kids who would, like, if there is a switch, I will totally press it and see what happens next. So when I press this switch, I thought a fan might start circling or a light might go on. But what really happened, a mob assembled under my home. So that button in my neighborhood, there was actually an alarm to the Muslims in our area that a community, the bulb lit up in a community area that a Hindu mob is attacking us. So that was my introduction, that how much polarized Aligarh was, how much integrated the violence was in the geography, in the nature, in the atmosphere of Aligarh. And so one thing that while growing up, and then I grew up, and I will not say I grew up in a ghetto during the times of communal violence, and I was pretty communal kid, and that will come across in my book as well. I will not say mince words when I say that. And then I was very fond of comic books, and I used to go in Hindu areas to buy comic books, and then I made friends with my comic book wala, and everybody said, this person will kill you if you keep going to Hindu mohallas during the time of communal violence. Your body will eventually end up in some drain or something. But I was too fond of comic books to worry about death. So I keep going in those mohallas. And I made my first Hindu friend, and he was my comic book wala. And I thought, yaar, sab achhe to hain. Matlab, why do these people keep saying all of those things? But yeah, like this finding a friend, even that element of hate, is I think what the idea of India has been throughout since the partition. But this was also an element that one thing I will talk about is about the normalization of violence in Aligarh and any small town city which has seen a lot of violence. So how does violence gets normalized? An aspect of normalization of violence, like when something starts happening too frequently, so you are not moved, nothing stirs inside you when somebody dies. Nothing stirs inside you when somebody's shop is being set on fire. And I think when I was living in that in that area, and I still live there, by the way, I am not moved on. My home is still situated on the border of a Hindu ghetto and a Muslim ghetto, and still live here. So that was a good vantage point to see the violence, the riots, and all of those things. So until unless something happens to, your friend, the violence doesn't become, that big in your mind. So when eventually, in 2006, my home was in the middle of a riot. 5 people were killed outside my home. One of the people who died was one of my friends. His name was Shadab. He was killed in the violence. I think I tried, after his death, that was when I thought that I would become a journalist, and eventually the book is a culmination of that. But that normalization of violence, I will talk about this, that is still, I see that all around us, like even with the violence, the terror attacks, what is happening in Gaza, and what is the amount of lynchings that are happening. So when one first lynchings happened, the Clark lynching happened, all of us were very moved. But by the time the 20th lynching happened, nobody really cares. Nobody really talks about it. So this is like the magnitude of violence is so much that make us, I don't know, like something, it stirs at the, it takes away our empathy. So what I see, it makes us apathetic. And I see that apathy in our country, I see it everywhere. And I will talk about the element of apathy, because that I think is the most important thing when we talk about the growing societal communalization. Because once you start feeling that apathy, when you stop thinking of the other person, that person is even human, you will not feel for that person. And when I stay in, I still live in, I don't have to be on the ground to find what is happening. I stay there. I see there is a crisis of empathy, of feelings in today's times, and that is I see among children. So one of those, things that I always say, like people like us, we have to acknowledge certain truths which are happening on the ground. The first truth in that element is, to be honest, I do think there are a lot of, I am a journalist, I have been a journalist. All of us believe the facts are sacrosanct. I don't think in this they don't. In today's time, stories matter more than facts. We live in a post-truth society. At the end of the day, we can tell so many stories. We can point out facts to people. People on the ground, they don't care. They care more about stories. So it's more important how we tell our stories. I was talking to somebody in Butler House, and they were selling, nobody is really moved by our our problems, like we live on the edge of Yamuna River, there are so many shanties and people aren't moved. I said, find a story, find somebody, a Sufi saint, make a Sufi saint here, and then create that story. And that idea of narrative is what we have, like either Modi's Chai Wala story or Arvind Kejriwal's whole Nayak thing. I do think people like us have to focus more on telling our stories. And that is the first truth, I would say. The second truth is, I have stopped appealing to people's sense of ethics and morals anymore. I don't think because I do see so many people appealing to that elements, I don't think on the ground, there are very few people who actually care about ethics and morals. However, they might project themselves to be in real life, I don't think. I think what right now the discourse is going, we should tell people what is happening in the country, what is happening to India's Muslims, what is happening to India's Christians or Sikhs or Dalits is very important. It is, it is very important for your well-being, Those stories are very important to your well-being. So we have to tell them, but how will they be moved if, that our empathy has died and we no longer care about facts? I think we need to talk about the children a lot, because what is happening in India's schools, there is a marginalization and abuse of Muslim students. And as Tahmina said about, at many places in Christian schools as Christians as well. So, I think we have to talk about children. So, I don't know, if we are looking in, because people do care about their children at least. That is, I'm very sure. So, but what kind of country are we giving them? So if they will grow up in this environment of hate, where hate is all pervasive, I think, and this is backed by researchers, this is backed by science, I'm not making it up, this will lead to depression, this will lead to anxiety, this will lead to, all kinds of dissociative disorders, which India is currently feeling right now. So we are actually, but not acting against it, we are making our children mad. Or I shouldn't say that word. I think we are making our children mentally ill, This is what we are doing to our children. I think the media discourse should focus more on the, can India really, progress by destroying its 200 million people? Will it not destroy itself? What will India's economy do? I think these things matter more for the people on the ground. So this certain discourses have to change in that sense, by keeping, because as I say again and again, what you say, stories, propaganda, what are the stories which are rumors matter more than history, at least in today's India, and especially in today's times of Bollywood movies which propagate history. Most people will believe those movies rather than the history books. What does, let's say, Irfan Habib or Romila Thapar, somebody can come on their Facebook page and they might say, what do you know? So we live in that kind of country right now, and we should acknowledge it. I think in today's times, what is especially hurtful for me, is the celebration of violence. You know, like when I was growing up, you know, whenever something or act of violence happened, like most people will actually be, you know, like this shouldn't have happened. But in today's times, ministers garland the killers. You know, that an act of celebration of those violence, if something happens to a Muslim or something happens to a Dalit, it is very easy to find people who will be justifying this and sometimes celebrating this. So that joy in dehumanization of Muslims or other minorities, I do think at those times we are living in when Muslims' lives are so dehumanized, but Christian Dalits' lives are so dehumanized, people from those communities have to rehumanize themselves and tell your story that we are also humans. We are not aliens. We are not barely humans. To reclaim our agency, reclaim our humanness. And right now, as I am in the Constitution Club of India, I will also talk about the Constitution. Article 25 to 28. So I will just talk about Article 25 to 28. What rights do they give to us? They give the right to practice, what you were saying, practice, profess and propagate your religion. Do we have this? I don't think so. I went to the Eid prayers in my home, and there was like an army was assembled around the mosque, as if, you know, I'm going to commit a crime by offering my prayers. So I do think, first, like Muslims, as a Muslim, I do demand my basic from Article 25 to 28, right to practice, profess and propagate my religion, and right to manage religious affairs, and that includes the work as well. And Article 28 as well, which restrict religious instruction in government institutions. So our Prime Minister should have been going around celebrating Ram Mandir that is against the Article 28. So I don't think in those times that we live in, we shouldn't really talk about really higher ideas. I think our Constitution gives us enough safeguards to protect us, and I think we should just somehow go back to basics and fight for a basic fundamental rights, and especially people coming from Christian community, people who are Dalits, women, people who are LGBTQ+, and people who are Muslims. Because we are also the children of this country. The country might forget us, but we don't never forget the country. So that is, I will end this with just not big demands: right to exist, right to religion, right to earn a livelihood in this country as a Muslim. And I will end this with this poem of Sahir Ludhianvi, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी, इन काली सदियों के सर से जब रात का आंचल ढलकेगा, जब दुख के बादल पिघलेंगे, जब सुख का सागर छलकेगा, जब अंबर झूम के नाचेगा, जब धरती नाचे गाएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी। जिस सुबह की खातिर जुग जुग से हम सब मर मर कर जीते हैं, जिस सुबह की अमृत की धुन में हम जहर के प्याले पीते हैं, इन भूखी प्यासी रूहों पर एक दिन तो करम फरमाएगी, वो सुबह कभी तो आएगी। थैंक यू।